Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. There are phenomena associated with the singular phenomena of hyperevidential recorded truths that show recorded collusions, interbranch, other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, uses consciously of insidiousness of logic A through Z through this, like, for example, the value of voting and relative things, simultaneously in exceptions. So, also state secrets and readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence originally instilled, that the roles of that, and them pretending other and how they've gotten away with it. Correlation, science, actually proper science with the most critical things shows that we should not, it shows the answers to things. Nature does it. We have finite details replaced. In other words, other things, others, ourselves are blamed for how and why our founders had to hide their roles, countering the slavery against everyone sickly distinctly. That subject treatments with the word slavery, with the phrase Jim Crow, or with the phrase witch trials, individually grouped it together. They're effectively used, for example, to measure and maintain how correlation was and is directed by our founders who had to to direct the other founders. Also because that's what the Constitution unabridged. An honest reception of appearances of justice with interpretation of Marbury versus Madison, that all real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. Nature's hypernative system is forbid Native Americans sickly distinctly from ourselves. It is forbid indigenous populations anywhere the species body stands sickly distinctly from ourselves. Because the names of just like the names of our body, the parts of our body, each person's body, the parts of your body have a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. And that has a semi-nature relationship to the only value, the only identity that makes more and is its own value its own way, which is through temporary / lasting forever nature, where and how it is being made as one of the things that is true always. Only the extent of it is debatable. And if that is debated, that nature of debate reveals inherent active and progressive truths and demonstration of the same thing. The ancients, before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, it is demonstrable that they understood, because nature shows a function by descriptions of emotions. If they are leaving out of a person's own or others, if they are leaving out the smallest finite detail, if they are leaving out the value of what is simultaneously true, that's simultaneously known. For example, just having black pupils, whites of eyes, and exception natures, knowing that part of it. We know when anyone makes with all the common convictions and opinions and theories regarding that, we know it left out the breaching method. That we know, if you're honest, you could discern since you are a kid. But that was also discerned. They have been putting, while being used remotely, need to pretend integrity because they have the nature of all locations' names also employed further as ground. See, the ancients, nature shows us we are not the other species, bodies, but they have the same qualities, aspects, and natures of us. They have the same three, they have individual group differences between the different species. Each species has that non distinctly, the same exact way, or just non distinctly, while relative to just being distinctly, where it's not the same way. But it is also hyper simultaneously. Because, in other words, one of the things that is non distinctly is that how these are three different distinct simultaneous natures of itself, where and how it can't be itself unless it is value. As the speak to the, can be negative to itself, can be positive to just itself, can be positive just to the species body or to the group one. See, the ancients knew before criminally foreign influence, nature reveals any identity of logic that values leaving, that doesn't have the sequence first, what only an individual can defend. The, either the value of the smallest finite detail, the order of the finite, or the value of what came first before that. And this is where and how it is functional, where and how there's a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. Thank God that the language is shared, not only non-distinctly, but where and how distinctly. It is where and how too. Each body, even the notes of each, but even the notes of music, each note, it's invisible but still discernible, and what it looks like, where it can be drawn to be simultaneously visible, invisible but still, and, you could, so it's still discernible, communicatable, because you could draw representation of it. But at least, but even though it's invisible, it still has further quality aspects in nature that where and how each note looks, not a little bit more like another note than that other note does to itself, because of where and how the identity of the simultaneous completes each self as its own. And wherever the slightest bit of the identity of the hyper simultaneous is, equally are two other with that bit of forever nature. Equally as value only increasing is its identity of relationship to itself, only better than perfect, only increasing. And the value of that. And this is where it uses exceptions in exception nature and uses a special difference. Therefore, it also uses a special difference hyper additionally from, while computers use it tactical ulterior from. Computers, because databases since before computers were in our being and have been used tactical ulterior from the Constitution unabridged and Marbury versus Madison, and the grounding of the significance of how interpretation of George Washington is that he could tell no lies. And how this was, in other words, if someone wants to debate, even if they want to debate if he said that or not, because we were told he said that, multiple sources. In other words, we know this, not only that the database's relationships and the relativity of it was criminally foreign influence and hyper criminally foreign influence at the same time. The difference of that was is also having been used. It is how it is left out when such a topic, such a subject like slavery could be brought up. And people would self-value the smallest finite detail. Not only, left out, the priority of how to assess, what, what name to use. In other words, that's used to measure and maintain the breaching method left out. Slavery is about a fact treatment nature, predicate acts with facts method. That also employed people to pretend it was what it caused and what it kept. And what it was forced to everyone for all kinds of phenomena of self-valued roles. Leave out the roles with that. Every subject is tied to instantly. It's a breaching method that used this since before computers, effectively to use remotely. Not only countries individually from across colonies individually from across the seas and their indigenous populations and through themselves too. It was colonists through colonists. Then they're coming over here. And, already there are proofs that they've been separated from naturally how nature wants us to be increasingly connected and increasingly independence, but increasingly per its science, per the value of individual group and together. The identities of logic and are manifest as criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously. Per identity treatments, having left out the identity theft, fraud, slander method, that elections, locations, for example, are involved with, where and how also political parties, regardless of their side, that difference also, it is recorded and employed by the breaching method. That was hyper sophistication, as nature shows us. This additional, there's one identity that the species can't be, and we can't be it with our species, but we are it anyway. Why and how the other species have black pupils? Why and how the other species have exception nature? Whites of eyes, some just black people's whites of eyes, no exception, but that's exception nature. It's showing us to explain this as it's distinct, non-distinct, and its hyper simultaneous relationship to itself. Those are three phrases because it has three identities of hyper invisible but still discernible, but only one way. Two of them are discernible because it is discernible how it is. One identity of relationship to itself where it is not juxtaposed with matter. It is one identity of relationship to itself where it is juxtaposed to matter. And this is simultaneously the conjunction of it where it completes each identity. Like just like the body, the parts of our body are, the parts of your body are semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. Simultaneously, your complete identity is semi-nature relationship to its identity of relationship to itself, which is greater than us three ways. Because this is what it looks like when we're from inside the identity of space/existence. This is also where increasingly relative is where and how formally the countries individually grouped and together, been forced, tricked, or persuaded to self-value. Formal definitions of space defined apart from physical matter. See, this nature communicates other. The nature communicated other to the ancients. Physics, metaphysics, and identity are three volumes. as temporary where it's slash lasting. And this is with the active part where we are living, but we are also, our acts. And for example, acts. The Racketeering Influenced the Corrupt Organization Act, for example. Robert Luskin was a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced the Corrupt Organization Act. He has recorded roles with various natures of federal criminals before that was proven, and organized crime bodies. They also had timed roles with unions, and some of them as people involved with unions, various natures of, pilfering money and other things, reported, proven, and proven. But also they've been involved with other natures of organized crime, involved with readings of statutes that are criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that are differentially the fault of overt criminal enterprises, of private ones, of other countries, but also of our own interbranch and or the exceptions tied to them, like prisons, like the people there, like their campuses, like the state corrections offices, like on-off state judicial offices, on-off all sides of criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates at the same time, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, also with the courts, differentially, but guilty, but differentially increasingly, better than perfectly, collusions between campuses of each age and age. Every campus I went to has recorded ties to people that were and are facilitated to roles against others, not realizing the extent of it because everyone's attached to fabricated audio and video transcripts. Under the guise of states' secrets legitimate, they still have the locations illegitimate with our founding, that they had to be counter extorted to force us to force them to help our founders, still being blamed for slavery for their still collusion /S with that breaching method and how to discern it, which is correlation by the list of ways there are to discern collusions times with other countries individually grouped and together, so time self-value, because that's also used remotely, where and how we could correlate. Same way computers work, but additionally to that. See, the mind could do things, even insects have spatial awareness of our consciousness, our state, our tactics to come after them. If we are going to come after them, in other words, animals, people who own pets would know. They communicate. Wild animals too. See, but we've been separated from these communications. Before America's founders were born, already had been sustained against the colonists at their countries before they even came here, themselves against themselves. Then when they came here, already, in other words, people have been blaming other things other than themselves for what really had separated people from the uses of fact-keeping nature before the sciences became criminally foreign influence. They had the phenomenon of the same identity of value / variable progression as the same identity of conjunction to every subject treatment, every finite detail, even the order of the finite itself. See, there are 5 distinct identities of order that are simultaneously positive to themselves or not, per nature's means to demonstrate, to communicate to us the importance of the difference between the discernment of positive truths, for example, that could be used for lies, to screen lies, to forbid proper treatment of finite, relative also to the value of what came true before this, and only increasing value of how functional it is, how there is not only an identity of hyper invisible but still discernible, but its demonstration also of why and how we have means to contemplate and what we should be contemplating and how, no matter where we are and what we're doing. See, but we have been separated from how reason works and as roles with tactical delusions. Our countries, for example, are individually grouped in together. They have roles with drugs crimes and medicines crimes, with only countering bodies to that, which is also they have physical delusions, nature delusions, and identity delusions. And I am not a doctor, but those are 3 multi-front. We are physics, we are metaphysics, where we are nature, for example, as a word for identity, which is why relative to why we have different words for verbs, because we're discerning its identity of relationship to the hyper invisible, but still discernible, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, inseparable not only from all things, but even from the smallest finite detail of each thing, even from each group detail this way, and further altogether. This way, where and how it shows as the value of the simultaneous, as the value of the hyper simultaneous, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. Again, where and how more forever nature is made. So they have the issues with nuclear weapons, and they have the issues with the words, the names. This is an identity of value/value progression being a living body is. It is a quality of diffusion and relative to the identity of hyper simultaneous. Every identity is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. The difference, is how its identity is every value/value progression. And it is hyper invisible, but still discernible and functional by how it is. So, being that it's the only identity that can be a value and make more of itself at the same time. So the circuit is an identity of value/value progression and relativity to components, aspects in nature that have not been treated properly in legal cases, all sides of criminal and civil cases, relative to where and to how sense and sensibilities, when calm and or when aggressive, with uses of words like delusions, at locations, online, and with the internet, all sides of criminal and civil cases, timed rules with the interbranch locations names, their family, where they go, their friends' names, the corners of streets. Timed rules will avert criminal enterprises and private ones. Unions used for where and how. There are union laws, for example, that give the right to lie to other people about the other opponents. See, but there are exceptions with that where that's not legitimate. Local 230 recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time they have roles with child abusers, leaders of the kids, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with people with the campuses. Know how Rocky Hill and Weathersfield are both 2 towns away from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. because there are men and women there, and in collusion with and as ones who are also men and women that since they were kids, they were attaching kids that weren't even in their classrooms. There were roles with people having attaching other kids that weren't even in the classroom to fake conversations with kids and adults and with themselves. Differentially, too, and the difference of that used. Where and how people say and do things at locations and pretending motivations because of the relative remote uses of all investigators and their campuses per use of all location /s by the breaching method originally instilled, recorded consciously, effectively, methodically, keeping what it caused and keeps blamed on other things, others, and or on selves. People pretending passions and emotions regarding what is calm and or what is aggressive, proper uses of words like delusions, of words like, and then they have to defend that. Increasingly after self-value roles, collusions with all kinds of medicines crimes, methods by pretending people had conversations with strangers, self-value. That is one of the things, one of the hyper evidential things that can be used to show only having where and how everyone used the branches of government, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people A through Z is used remotely. It is where and how this breaching method set up everyone to sense and discern each other through each other for itself. If collusion with either criminal and insidious natures of negatives, overt or insidious, or positive criminal and insidious nature of positive treatments, overt or insidious, and the difference of that. See, nature communicates and demonstrates and is functional by how it is. 5 distinct identities of difference. As hyper as the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Where and how, for example, all the parts of speech are invisible but still discernible to the extent we have agreed. But the reception of our languages individually grouped and together has been designed to keep this obfuscated and or to adapt. Where and how, worse than obfuscated, is where and how the proper reception of the languages would have revealed improper counters to things like predicate acts, which is simultaneously means with the drafting of acts, such as the criminal. In other words, see how they left out the grouping forced by the breaching method, tactical ulterior from communicating tactical ulterior from what nature does about black and white and exceptions in exception nature. And see how that also hyper evidential is how that's left out and where and how people pretend passions, emotions, or calmness. And like, for example, with description or non-description, if anyone tries to use passions right with that, if you do it right, even if you do it wrong, it's going to reveal the answer, the same thing. In other words, if you communicate it wrong. The reason the fake science is pretended other is not prejudice. It's how employed. We're with the breaching method causing and is causing nature's demonstrations of that were effective and are effectively maintained, blamed on other things, others, or ourselves, and then further through ourselves. And that's blamed, and what that causes is blamed on other things, others, ourselves too. It's employed all identity ground locations. Certain type of victim / hyper victim needing to speak about the law, not only before they are ready to, by the time they're ready to, already though only three branches of government, their uses of words like kids, maturity, immaturity, and or adults already use criminally foreign influence positive treatments. This breaching method back then everyone incapable of speaking for the law properly because of the collusions and the value of their the nature of debate and how and why really has stayed so sick and fake. So Washington D.C. has courts names has private lawyers like with Connecticut and federal involved with. There's a Robert Cheverie who's one of the ones on off the state capitol of Connecticut. I don't. The proofs they took me pictures of me appearing there with other kids when I was a kid in a room with people smoking, as people have been planting fake conversations with me and making it look because you would look, in other words, look like I had conversations with one of those kids. I never had a word of conversation with him, Nick LaPera, and he's got I don't know the word. He's got family members that live near where the reportedly near where the Wethersfield police station is now, and people associated with Joshua Schumacher and his mother, involved with New Britain Superior Court with a whole bunch of names, Connecticut District Court, a whole bunch of names, Hartford Courts, a whole bunch of names before the World Trade Center attack. And in that context and sense, were uses of their roles with predicate acts with facts and child abuses and identity thefts and fraud, slanders, faked audio and video transcripts, pretended recorded on campuses, filmed 24/7. All uses of words like security, criminally foreign influence since founding, and or with the exceptions. So in other words, the breaching method forced everyone to measure and maintain, leaving out the significant, only increasing value of the significance of how the breaching method employed black and white to mean tactically ulterior from what nature communicates and it uses to communicate where and how the sciences appear to be not sharing an identity. It uses where and how it shows us they do anyway, and how to discern. For example, in other words, how to have the nature of debate will reveal what we would have all agreed because nature demonstrates it. There is one hyper metaphysic / metaphysics. As three identities of relationship to itself, where we have an extent of the complete identity of the of space / existence that we can discern by the portion we have. And its complete identity of relationship to itself, only increasing, and how it uses exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other, right there to be used to figure out how it's a demonstration of anyway, because it is. And this has to do with how it uses a special difference. The breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, made incapable of even fathoming how it used remotely, for example, our experts like Einstein. Human, when I say I say human bodies. Experts, they're in defense of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity, therefore names treatments that can't be defended in the Constitution unabridged. And Marbury versus Madison, defended and appreciated properly at the same time. This is about how nature is hyper additionally itself. This is what, why, and how there are exceptions properly. In other words, the nature of debate, quality of experts, use of that, tactical ulterior. In other words, uses of short positive and negative treatments, natures of debate, where and how other, in other words, if a lawyer wants to debate with me about the value of how the predicate act and the predicate of English, the predicate act is value to the shared identity, the scientists, the identity the scientists share. The predicate act is value relative to me as means to discern a criminal insidiousness nature, as an identity, and as a body, and or as a body, as a group, or as a member of a group, as a criminal enterprise. But see, this preaching method knew that and how effectively it's recorded having kept overt criminal enterprises private ones, other natures of criminal insidiousness, at the same time, needing to hide the same sequence shifts and uses of them, other natures of illusions, as roles with use consciously, singularly, of a juxtapose a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime, which is one of the answers to why and how so many little kids could discern from the youngest age. Adults and kids dishonest about American history and about their motivations for why they were and are. But it comes with excuses that are legitimate. So everyone forgets that and misses how that is noted and overcome by kids and by adults as the identities of, as lawyers also on all sides of criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates, and the lawyers. They have rules with federal evidence as crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes, and uses of that as collusions with other natures of organized crime, and other roles and uses other uses simultaneously of instances, as so therefore locations, including the interbranch locations, therefore simultaneously, kept needing to hide the real what's actually recorded from and her out of correlation nature, what's actually recorded, and needing to pretend other motivations. So they have, this is where and how the statistical uses and trained voices and the nature of debate become so serious, because there are other natures and methods of elections hostage. There are uses of evidences. In other words, there's evidence. The president's help said that. You know how many countries there are in the world? How many variables? An individual leader is not going to say, oh, yeah, and explain to the person. They have roles with overt criminal enterprises on and off the campuses. They are increasingly demonstrating that has roles with all these ways. They don't care about when they pretend passions and emotions. Like they don't care about the security of their police forms. The ones who are speaking, because they have roles. They have CNN did good reporting with them. They have sources lying to them. CNN and Fox News. Fox News did good reporting too. But they both have commonly people on off CCSU, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on off Trinity College, who have roles with predicate acts on my street in Wethersfield. So, and there are roles with boards of education and with the FBI, with criminally foreign influence uses of news predicate acts, and roles with names at elections locations and their fake motivations. They pretend they do testing people and things like that or whatever off campuses. They have a whole bunch of nations. There's a whole bunch of people with a Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez brought up the word logistics. Fox News recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have police forms that say, oh, people have a big rap sheet, but they don't tell them what. And because they say it has states' rights not to. Connecticut interbranch has been roles of wire crime acts and methods tied to this. And their motivations. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also vertical and horizontal confessions. They have roles, a whole bunch of roles with Koreans, with the campuses, for example, and with the names involved, and with people from Italy, involved in Pakistan. Hello, other Asian countries, and the interbranch family members, the adults and the kids. Tactical terror within each age of correlation is actually correlating. So where there is communications is greater than, while simultaneously is more finite than what is said. And it is inseparable from the value of what really came first, too. And so, especially when those kids that are sent to jails and stuff like that, because they tell them they catch them lying or something like that, they're lying to them first. This is what really had roles worse with the shootings in New York City. Don't forget, I mean, we could observe this preaching method consciously, tactically denatured the suburbs and sustained that before our founders were born. That at the end of it, before they were born, that design for the suburbs. Now, where and how, everyone was being hurt sickly, non-distinctly. But now, while that was being sustained, what it was measured, what it effectively measured and maintained without anyone discerning, was what it caused the breaching method that already taken semi-ancient names of the human species bodies, names, tactical terror, from how they were used before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, the way nature demonstrates us to use them. So, in other words, there are criminally foreign influence readings of statutes relative to their roles at off-campus locations, where and how. For example, people from Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also as Wethersfield Police. They have roles with Wethersfield Police, switching and forging names with names on my street and tied to them increasingly as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, leading up to it and since, also with their extended family members, also involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, as doctors and judges tied to them who've been in fabricating audio and video fake conversations with kids. They have roles of rape threats that were effectively used to force a principal child sex offender. They have roles with judges killing and speaking fake things into records. They have women judges involved with this. So we need to get them on paper because at the court's locations, they have roles with the court's names, with all sides in criminal and civil cases, foreign and domestic military. And these are increasingly names also at forensics locations, and their roles with Los Solitos, various natures of other criminal enterprises, no groupings relative to predicate acts, relative to to the relativity, how they left out black pupils, whites, and eyes. These natural grouping differences left out. That not only that left out, the breaching method, how it employed that in all roles to response to it, leaving it out. And see, that's valuing that having been. And that's valuing what prevented our founders from expounding upon why and how they had to hide their roles, counter-extorting the other founders, giving everyone a shared narrative like the tea taxes, things like that. They needed natures of unity. They needed natures of independence in phases that were that were incapable of being that once they got it. I mean, they're incapable. What they're trying to be, they were incapable of defending that and of affording the short words of one person properly with correlation nature as we are actually capable of correlating. So a little kid could discern. Let alone a little kid who's black could discern government is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. But we have experts on delusions that are still tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influence. And this is a problem because they've been hiding it. And this preaching method knew that such experts would need to hide such per their roles, with interbranch. And with the prison, Sandy Hook prisons has rules with their federal criminals before they were caught. And with the people that work at the prison, planting evidences together to hide how they've been used remotely, differentially from the interbranch. Sometimes it's the interbranch, sometimes it's them. It's constantly the difference of that too, increasingly too, because that has relativity to where and how we are actually syntactically manifest. Each of the departments at Central Connecticut State University, it is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed. Criminally foreign influence, and pretending others simultaneously, which is also evidence. And the value of that is also used. And so that's why, in other words, for example, it is being communicated also when I don't get a response. You guys know, the police that are, these are also police forms involved with, this is a campus of Mr. Waters. Waters wrote, greetings. I caught them. Please help. Please follow mandated law for the FBI and other agencies and the courts and their family members. They forced rules with predicate acts before the World Trade Center attack. And then I got it confirmed various ways. There's an Amy and/or an Emily. She switches names as roles with next to schools, with courts, with Hartford courts, with West Hartford locations, with Dean Alford. Dean Alford or someone using his name, and a Dean Judd and his family and other people tied to them. Roles also with probation officers and people on all sides and tied to killing people who got murdered and people that know them. And the investigators who are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, pretending for other regions. They're not legitimately with other nations. Like Afghanistan, they have Afghanistan leadership for decades, and kids involved also where and how they have employed members of. They'll get representatives, a person who's a female, and involve her with various natures of organized crime with evidences, interbranch women. Then they can't, and it takes syntactically manifest, certain type of victim / hyper victim, the same way they do with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones and insidiousness of A through people A through Z, where and how actually recorded they have roles also with the names on off the state, on off the communications locations like WFSB and Fox Connecticut News. Increasingly roles with names at businesses next to them with all ranks in the military, individually grouped and together, recorded how self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and roles with the names with foreign and domestic medical, attaching little kids to fake ties to themselves, fake tight natures of ties to themselves. Even complete fake conversations with people that never had conversations as by doctors, also involved with threats, also as male and female families working together with Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living and their roles with the police forms, with medical locations across the states, because they never stopped being criminally foreign influence. They never stopped being roles with criminally foreign influence uses of databases, which were coupled with even worse uses of locations that seemed less because of how the shared roles with that and everything else with the location too, /S. everywhere the species body is. We're in a semi-ancient trap. All right. So the news is preventing offensively out locations mandated law while they're planting federal crimes and forcing people to speak through others, because also is employed as them pretending that that's all they're hiding, and and they're lying about the motivations of others to prevent people from bringing to speaking about the rest of it, because they're needing to adapt not legitimately for their roles with all these different countries. Afghanistan, Russia, Koreans, people from Japan. Their roles with these people with this all along Route 175, with mayors from Wethersfield, retired from before I was even born, and through my life, increasingly roles with my name used criminally for an influence by them. Their roles with the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the Wethersfield Police Facebook page, and with Schumack family, with various names. And there were other people that worked with the courts, even the bailiffs and things like that, involved with predicate acts with child offenders. And these same names and families have roles timed with elderly homes in VA and the policing of it, not by accident. I'm going to slap the drugs right out of the. Don't use words like big pharma. That's small too, compared to what the real problem is. I'm going to slap the delusions right out of the fake branches of government. You're going to find the seed. They're going to fall. Bill Wall, vaccines. And fear God, Massachusetts, for the roles with this CM Faglione and the others with the military involved with the FBI, and these people with the Central Connecticut State University tied to Ray Reynolds and the Pandolfs, and the people on off Valley Crest and Morgan Circle involved with the FBI and the overt criminal enterprises, and more child abuses through time, and more roles with the principal child abusers campus. Fear God, because it's more campuses. Also, the Whiting Forensics has made confessions, demonstrations of roles further with the courts and names on off other campuses in town, and they're increasingly relevant, and the people next to them. So let's get them on paper real fast. Let's go. Vaccines. Make sure they get pick one name in sequence too.